Alpha Company, 1st of the 8th, you're getting the recognition you deserve. Be proud of that. I know you're proud, and I can see it in your eyes. David always said, these are the men who earned the Medal of Honor. I just had the great honor of wearing it. David earned the Medal of Honor. These men are great soldiers. We also have present 2 members of Bravo Company, 1st of the 8th Infantry, who was the unit who moved to support Alpha Company on that fateful day in 1967. So welcome, Bravo Company. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Medal of Honor Enshrinement Ceremony honoring First Sergeant David H. McNerney. My name is Bob Babcock. I am the president of the National 4th Infantry Division Association, and I'm greatly honored to have been asked to be the MC today. I'm not only a 4th Division vet, I was a very good friend of David McNerney. I first met David McNerney here in Washington, D.C. in 1984 when the 3-man statue was dedicated at the Vietnam Memorial Wall. I next met David in 2001 when we dedicated a monument to the 4th Infantry Division on the road leading into Arlington National Cemetery. I encourage you to go look at it sometime if you haven't seen it. After that, David and I spent a lot of time together, and we became great friends. And let me tell you, David is a true American hero. Take it for somebody who knows, and every one of us who knows him miss him every day. This event didn't just happen. There was a lot of work that went on. And let me recognize some of the people who over the last 9 months have made this happen. Among them are Mayday Taylor. Mayday is sitting right over here. Rick Sauer, stand up, Rick. Rick Sauer. Rick Sauer's the one who called me and asked if I would do this, and I said I would be honored. And he said, by the way, could you get General Odierno to show up as well? I think this is the reason I'm here. I met Gerald Blankenship. Have I got to mention you yet? Gerald, stand up. Gerald Blankenship, I have known as well as David. I don't think I ever saw David without Gerald with him. Great American patriot, a submarine sailor amongst us infantrymen. Also, the McNerney family, not only for donating David's stamps and a nice monetary contribution to the Postal Museum, and from the Postal Museum staff, Director Alan Kane, and his staff, Allison Wickens and Dan Piazza, were great partners making this happen. I think it's coming together very well. Thank you very much for all of your work. One man you have not seen yet, but you're going to see him in a minute, I want to say a few words about. And that is First Sergeant Alan Durbin. He will be carrying the Medal of Honor when it comes into the room here in a few minutes. First Sergeant Durbin retires soon. In fact, this is his last official duty as a First Sergeant in the Old Guard of the United States Army. He has 6 combat tours during his career. When assigned to Alpha Company, 1st of the 8th, David McNerney's company, not at the same time, he had the honor of escorting David in 2001 to the 4th Division monument dedication. They became great friends, and up until the day that David died, were great friends. David even invited First Sergeant Durbin and his wife to the Medal of Honor convention in 2009, the last one David attended. Another thing that First Sergeant Durbin did, and I think you will all appreciate this. On March 26, 2003, he made his 6th ever parachute jump. You make 5 to get your wings. His next jump out of a C-17 at 30,000 feet, diving to 800 feet, along with the 173rd Airborne Brigade, jumped out into northern Iraq. The only mass combat assault by parachute since the Vietnam War. Well, I won't say that, we did it in Afghanistan. But for the first time for the 173rd since then. He has served twice with the Old Guard. He was on the funeral detail for President Ronald Reagan. And he is now ready to move to Indiana on a small farm and grow wine. So you will see him shortly. With him are his wife Christine and his father Marcus. Okay, I've got everybody introduced, and some of you may wonder, as I did up until 9 months ago, what in the world does David McNerney have to do with the National Postal Museum? As long as I knew David, we never talked about anything except military. Well, those of you who know David know that David has been a stamp collector virtually all of his life. So I asked Gerald and his nieces, I said, tell me the story so all of us can understand that connection. And let me read it just to make sure I get it. As a young boy, when they moved from Massachusetts down to Houston, Texas, David and Richard's father took them to see a stamp collector. He thought maybe they could start playing with stamps and keep them out of trouble. They got into the Boy Scouts, and in 1948, as a Life Scout in Troop 505 in Houston, Texas, David got real serious about stamp collecting. He could look at a stamp and travel the world, and he let his imagination go so that he would become a world traveler just by looking at stamps. This interest stayed until he became an adult, but when he got into the military, he didn't have time to pursue it the way he would have liked to. But when he retired from the Army, he got real serious. He became a customs agent, and he amassed an impressive collection of stamps. He thought about being a stamp dealer, but he couldn't bring it to his heart to sell any of those precious stamps that he had. So he bought stamps and kept them. When he ran out of room in his house, you can only store so many stamps, right? He took his garage, air conditioned it, built shelves in there, and it became his stamp room. And he had ultraviolet lights, and he would study and organize his collection, and the only way to get into there was by invitation. Nobody got in there unless David wanted you in there. He would attend stamp shows several times a year, and then go home and bury himself in his stamp room and study those stamps that he had bought. He loved his stamps. David would have a PhD in stamp collecting if there was such a degree. He could look at any stamp from the US or the world and tell you its value. His enthusiasm for collecting, which started as a young boy, remained with him until the day he died. David's last trip to Washington, D.C., in May of 2010, he knew his days were numbered, and he came here to the National Postal Museum. And he had one request. He wanted to see some very rare and valuable stamps. So what he asked to do was, I want to see the Balbo covers. And Mayday Taylor worked with Dan Piazza, and they made it happen. And David died a happy man, having seen those things he had wanted to see all of his life. With that background, it's time to begin the ceremony. Those of you in the aisle here needs to move to either side, and those over here, you got to give room for these people because we got some great military people coming down the aisle. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the posting of the colors and remain standing for the national anthem and for the reading of the citation for the Medal of Honor. Post the colors. As the colors approach, you will notice the cased colors. These are the 4th Infantry Division colors, which will remain cased due to their deployment in operating Enduring Freedom in Kandahar, Afghanistan. You will also notice the colors of the 1st Battalion, 8th Infantry Regiment, the unit David served with when he earned his Medal of Honor. The 8th Infantry Regiment has served our country since 1838 and today stands ready at Fort Carson, Colorado to once again move into harm's way as they have done on 4 occasions in the past 10 years. Post the national and the Army colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Okay, thank you. Attention to orders. McNerney, David H., 1st Sergeant, United States Army, Company 8, 1st Battalion, 8th Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division. Place and date: Polydoc, Republic of Vietnam, 22 March, 1967. Citation: 1st Sergeant McNerney distinguished himself when his unit was attacked by a North Vietnamese battalion near Polydoc, South Vietnam. Running through the hail of enemy fire to the area of heaviest contact, he was assisting in the development of a defensive perimeter when he encountered several enemy at close range. He killed the enemy but was painfully injured when blown from his feet by a grenade. In spite of this injury, he assaulted and destroyed an enemy machine gun nest that had pinned down 5 of his comrades beyond the defensive line. Upon learning his commander and artillery forward observer had been killed, he assumed command of the company. He adjusted artillery fire to within 20 meters of the position in a daring measure to repulse enemy assaults. When the smoke grenades used to mark the position were gone, he moved into a nearby clearing to designate the location to friendly aircraft. In spite of enemy fire, he remained exposed until he was certain the position was spotted, and then climbed into a tree and tied the identification panel to its highest branches. Then he moved among his men, readjusting their position, encouraging the defenders, and checking the wounded. As the hostile assaults slackened, he began clearing a helicopter landing site to evacuate the wounded. When explosives were needed to remove large trees, he crawled outside the relative safety of his perimeter to collect demolition material from abandoned rucksacks. Moving through a fusillade of fire, he returned with the explosives that were vital to the clearing of the landing zone. Disregarding the pain of his injury and refusing medical evacuation, First Sergeant McNerney remained with his unit until the next day when the new commander arrived. First Sergeant McNerney's outstanding heroism and leadership were inspirational to his comrades. His actions were in keeping with the highest traditions of the U.S. Army and reflect great credit upon himself and the armed forces of his country. Please be seated. No, just be seated for now. Be seated. You will notice that there is an empty chair in the front of the room. The purpose of the empty chair is to remind all who see it of those who have gone before, who gave all they had as they paid the cost with blood or are a POW or missing in action. It serves to encourage us to stand straighter and give of ourselves in return. Commit to memory this fact: only the dead have seen the end to war. First Sergeant Durbin, present the medal. Please stand for the retiring of the Medal of Honor. First Sergeant Durbin, retire the Medal of Honor to its place of honor upstairs. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Smithsonian National Postal Museum, Mr. Alan Kane.
Well, good morning, and welcome to the Smithsonian National Postal Museum. First, I'd like to welcome General Oldinero, Bob Babcock, members of A Company, the McNerney family, Postmaster General, and honored guests. And as I said, on behalf of the Smithsonian Institution and the National Postal Museum, I'm honored to accept the Medal of Honor to put in our new William H. Gross stamp gallery for the world to see. The museum has 6 million objects. It's the second largest collection of all of the 19 Smithsonian museums. But this object is special. This is really, really special. Now, you learn something every day. It's kind of interesting as you get older. What I learned, I'd say about 10 minutes ago, is the speechwriter who wrote my speech was the same speechwriter who wrote Bob's speech. And we both have basically the exact same thing, the story of David as a stamp collector, and where he stored it in his garage with the environmental systems and so on. I don't know, I think I have to change speechwriters. I don't quite understand that. So instead of repeating exactly what Bob said, let me just take a minute to tell you a few other things. Today we open up the largest stamp gallery in the world, the William H. Gross Stamp Gallery. It's upstairs. I hope you will see it before you leave. David's medal will be up there, along with 20,000 other objects. Our goal basically is to show rarities to collectors, very rare things, but at the same time, show family and kids the beauty of stamps and the educational value of stamps. And David understood that. I'm sure he understood that. Stamps are the story of the history, heritage, and heroes of the United States. That's what's on a stamp. Pure education, and we want to get to the kids. So we've opened that gallery today, and just a couple items you might find interesting. We have 6 million objects. You ever look at 6 million items? It's not easy. It takes a little while. It took us 7 years. 7 years to go through all of these items and figure out which ones to put up there. 7 years. And then we had to conserve each item and get it perfect. 4 years. 4 years to conserve the collection. And then we had to mount them on boards and put them in cases. 3 years. And if you line up the boards one after the other, it's 3.5 times the size of the Washington Monument. 3.5 times the size of the Washington Monument. So it's a beautiful gallery, and I'm really happy that David's medal will be up there. As I say, it's awful special. So thank you and have a good day, and please join us and see this.
Thank you, Alan. And that story of David was worth repeating, I tell you. I mean, they would love to hear that again because that's a fabulous story about a fabulous man. Right now, we have a special presentation to Alan from the battalion commander and the command sergeant major of the 1st of the 8th Infantry, Lieutenant Colonel Alan Leth and Command Sergeant Major Ray Gabelman.
On behalf of soldiers past and present of 1/8 Infantry, we'd like to present you with this replica of our colors and the Alpha Company Guidon to help you in promoting and continuing the legacy of First Sergeant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
If you haven't noticed, the Alpha 1st of the 8th Company Guidon is standing right over there next to the colors of the 8th Infantry. At this time, I would like to introduce representing Texas Senator John Cornyn, Legislative Assistant Michelle Chen. Michelle?
The senator is unable to be with us today, so he asks that I read this letter. Dear friends, though I am unable to be with you today, I send my greetings as you all gather to honor the heroic legacy of Sergeant David McNerney. As his unit stood surrounded in the Vietnamese jungle, Sergeant McNerney ran through a hail of enemy fire to establish a defensive perimeter. Although injured by a grenade, he continued to assault and destroy an enemy machine gun that had pinned down 5 of his fellow soldiers. He then assumed command after learning that his commander had been killed, repeatedly putting himself in danger to achieve the evacuation of his men and refusing to himself be evacuated until a new commander arrived the next day. Sergeant McNerney distinguished himself by his actions and was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions in Vietnam, our nation's highest award for valor in action. Sergeant McNerney was a proud veteran and a great Texan. I was privileged and humbled to meet him. Our nation owes a debt of gratitude to him for his selfless service to this country, and I commend everyone whose efforts have resulted in bringing to fruition this dedication of his Medal of Honor to the Smithsonian Institution. The display of Sergeant McNerney's award will serve as a lasting reminder for future generations of the breadth of the valor and the depth of personal sacrifice that has guaranteed our freedom since our nation's founding. I send my best wishes on this day. May God bless you all now and always. Sincerely, John Cornyn, U.S. Senator.
Thank you, Michelle. Our keynote speaker today is General Ray Odierno, current Chief of Staff of the Army, 4th Infantry Division Commanding General from October 2001 to June 2004, and Honorary President of the National 4th Infantry Division Association. I first met Ray and Linda Odierno when he took command of the 4th Division in October 2001, the first flight I took after 9/11, knowing the world had changed and Ray and his team had a lot of hard work ahead of them. Over the years, we have become friends. Thus, I'm one of the few who will introduce him as my friend Ray, not as General Odierno. And Linda, his wife, has set the example, the standard of selfless service that all Army wives aspire to be. And I tell you what, I have learned the world from Linda as a friend and as I know what selfless service of an Army wife is. Linda was also a friend of David's. She got to know David real well. The last time Linda saw David McNerney was when she sat next to him on one side and Mayday Taylor on the other side at the premiere of the documentary Honor in the Valley of Tears, right here in D.C., and those are for sale, those DVDs in the gift shop. When Saddam Hussein was captured by Ray's 4th Infantry Division and Special Operations Forces on December 13, 2003, I was home and I sent an email to him congratulating him on behalf of the 4th Infantry Division veterans for that great feat. Never expecting to get a response. He was a busy man. You can imagine how busy he was. Within an hour, I got a response thanking me for the note and telling me about the pride he has in the soldiers and families of the 4th Infantry Division and of all America's military, steadfast and loyal. Not only did Ray command the 4th Division in Iraq during the first year of the war, he also was the commander of Multinational Corps Iraq and the mastermind in implementing the successful surge. Less than a year after returning from that assignment, he was called on again and returned to Iraq as overall commander of Multinational Forces Iraq, a job he held for 2 years. If you look at the right sleeve of Ray when he gets up here, those are combat stripes, a stripe for every 6 months he spent in a combat zone. He spent over 4 years in Iraq, not counting his time in Desert Storm. This is the second time in 2 months that I've called on Ray and Linda to help. I invited them down to Fort Benning, Georgia, where we dedicated a monument to the 4th Infantry Division, all of the past, present, and future soldiers, along with their families. They very readily agreed to come and participate. When I asked them again, knowing David McNerney and the men of Alpha 1-8, they said, absolutely, we'll be here. So Ray and Linda, thank you very much for both occasions, for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, a proud 4th Infantry Division veteran, the 38th Chief of Staff of the Army, my friend, General Ray Odierno.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, everybody sit down. So, as always, we were talking about speechwriters, so my speechwriters diligently wrote me a speech. I'm probably going to use some of it, but I'm probably not going to use most of it today. But first, before I get going, it really is a privilege to be here on this great occasion, recognizing First Sergeant David McNerney. And it's wonderful to see so many people here today who recognize what this means, not only to David and his family, but to our country. And first, I want to thank the McNerney family, because you've dedicated yourselves, all of you, to ensuring that the country gets to share David and his memory and what he means to the Army, to the soldiers who continue to serve in our Army, but also to greater America, who will get the chance to witness his other endeavors, such as stamp collecting. I often, as I go around and I meet people, you know, there's always stereotypes. And there's always stereotypes of soldiers. You know, we're tough, our knuckles drag on the ground, we have no other interests but being in the military. But one of the things I talk a lot about is that we have incredibly talented people in our Army. There are people who dedicate themselves to a mission. There are people who are broad, who do many other interests, who represent the best there is about this great country of ours. And so I think you sharing David's stamp collection here with the rest of the country really is a statement about the great men and women who have always served this country of ours, no matter when they were asked. From the time of the Revolutionary War till today, it has not changed. Where men and women step forward, willing to sacrifice their own lives in order to protect what is important to us, the freedoms and liberty that we enjoy every single day. And many Americans take that for granted. But all you have to do is travel around the world. Whether you traveled around the world in the 1800s or the 1900s or today, you realize how many people yearn and just wish that they had the freedoms and the liberties that we have in this country. And it's because of men represented like David who have made that possible from their own personal sacrifices. I feel honored that I had a chance to know him. Linda and I first met him in 2001, I think at the first reunion that we had of the 4th Infantry Division. That time we had at Fort Hood, Texas. And it's the first time we had the opportunity to interact with him. We had a chance to interact with him many times after that. And actually Linda more than me, because I was deployed for much of the time, unfortunately, since about 2003. As Bob mentioned, I spent about almost 5 years away from home. But Linda and David built up a relationship over time. And it was because, in his own way, David was always given back to 4th Infantry Division, 1-8 Infantry, Alpha Company, 1-8 Infantry. That was important to him, that he would sit down and have an opportunity to interact with today's soldiers. And our soldiers learned so much from him, his experiences, his humility, what he stood for. That was so important. And now many of us who didn't know are surprised that he stood for something else, a dedication to our own history through stamps, a dedication that he started as a young boy and carried on through his entire life. And the fact that he and his family want to now share that with the rest of the world. You know, we were talking on the way over here today, and Linda was talking about the last time she saw him, which was at the filming of the documentary when she sat next to him. And she told me she was sitting there watching this, and she was just absolutely amazed what this man did. And she said, you know, she kind of held his hand and looked at him, and he just looked at her and smiled. And it was kind of like, his look was, I just did what anybody else would do. I was just there for my fellow soldiers. We were there to protect each other. That's who we are. War has strategic implications and operational implications, but to a soldier, it's very personal. It's about those who are on your right and left. It's about those men and women that you lived every second of every moment in very difficult situations with. And you form a bond that is hard to describe. And there are certain people who are able to step up, and nobody knows quite why. Nobody knows quite understand what those characteristics are that causes somebody in the most difficult times to do something extraordinary. David McNerney stands for extraordinary. And he's all taught us great lessons, like many other Americans. So that's what today is about, the fact that a great man who gave his life for his country, who dedicated it to his fellow soldiers, who showed great courage in his time in the military, but continued to give back years and years and years after that to develop young men and women to follow in his footsteps. And today is about someone who was much greater than that, who had many other interests. And now, many people will have the opportunity to see that and share in David's passion. So it's an honor for me to be here representing the Army, representing the 4th Infantry Division, and representing 1-8 Infantry. I would be remiss if I didn't finish by thanking all of those here today from Alpha Company and Bravo Company, 1-8 Infantry. You meant a lot to David. Those bonds that you formed are forever, and you know that, I don't have to tell you. But I'm incredibly proud of what you represent and what you continue to represent to our soldiers of today. Our young men of today stand on the shoulders of those who came before them. They are able to do what they do today because of you. So thank you so much for that. I want to thank the Postmaster General. I want to thank you and all associated with this great day for taking David's collection and displaying it so everyone else can see it. So thank you so much for being here. And I want you to know, as always, I finish with the strength of our nation is our Army. The strength of our Army is our soldiers. The strength of our soldiers is our families. And that's what makes us Army strong. Steadfast and loyal. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, while you're standing, we are going to sing David McNerney's favorite song, God Bless America. The words are in your program if you don't know them.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the retiring of the colors. Retire the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. The Medal of Honor and some of David's stamps are on display in the National Stamp Salon of the William H. Gross Stamp Gallery on the floor above us. Thanks for being here. Have a great remainder of the day. Steadfast and loyal. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That would, yeah, you might like something like that, wouldn't you? Have you seen that? Okay, we know what that is.
So if there's any variety of it, you go back to the press chief and find the position. But you, something that was wrong with us is when we had re-entered it, because it goes back to CO. And then we got it picked up. Oh, maybe we can't turn the state into
But you don't know where the hell it's going.
Yeah, look at that one.
And then they gotta leave.
See that one? Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that one's so.
Yeah.
more and more people, presidents are getting together with us. People really